Good evening. The bottom half of the South Island has been virtually isolated by a major telephone fault. It's understood a fibre optic cable has been cut by a digger working near Islington, just south of Christchurch. But unlike the situation 10 days ago, the 111 emergency service hasn't been affected. Mark Price with the details.
The fault occurred at 1 o'clock this afternoon, and many people's thoughts obviously turned to the 111 emergency service, which was flooded with calls from people checking that it still worked. Telecom and emergency services like the fire brigade confirmed the system was unaffected by the fault, but people dialling to check were likely to make things more difficult for people reporting genuine emergencies. As well as a major problem causing disruption for telephone users, the same fault hit computer links. EFTPOS in supermarkets went down, but transactions could still be carried out manually. Some money machines worked, while some didn't. Computer terminals were down, but banks seem to have been able to avoid major problems.
The tellers don't seem to be affected too much. We haven't got many out-of-town people coming in to cash cheques. But in those circumstances, it would be managers' discretion whether or not we'd cash cheques. The overseas department can't get a proper link up through to Christchurch for overseas cover.
So to what extent are your customers being inconvenienced?
Not greatly, because only if accounts have to be opened today, if they've put money into the account. If the link doesn't go up, if the telephone link doesn't go up, we can't process the account opening forms.
So there hasn't been a great queue of people turned away today? Television 3 went off the air in the south until links normally used by Television New Zealand were brought into play. And a swarm of ageing typewriters were put back into service in the South Tonight office to get the news out in the old-fashioned way. Police reported they had no contact with the Wanganui computer at one stage, and one civil servant reported a pleasantly quiet afternoon, disconnected as he was from his Wellington-based superiors.
Lucky chap. Otago University students were out on the streets of Dunedin this afternoon protesting about fees.
Close to 4,000 students demonstrated as part of a national campaign against government user pays policy in education. Although one placard did take on a slightly different line. The main concern in a series of student actions throughout the week is the $1,200 student fee. Although the government's overall record on funding for education did come under attack.
Is it the $1,500 fees you have to pay? No. Is it the crowded libraries? No. Is it the crowded lecture theatres? No.
There'll be more about student concerns on One Network News at 6 o'clock.
Michael Lynch with that report. Self-confessed bird smuggler Freddie Angel has been sentenced to 8 months jail on fraud charges. The 30-year-old Southland panel beater had pleaded guilty to 15 charges of writing dud cheques worth $37,000. But Angel's denying 2 charges relating to the theft of 2 major Mitchell parrots from the Dunedin Gardens. He's elected trial by jury. Doctors are worried about a proposed change in the way medicines are prescribed. A survey shows more than half of them think their patients may suffer if pharmacists are allowed to substitute copycat drugs without the doctor's approval. The government suggested the change in an effort to cut its drugs bill. Kathy Graham has details.
Most asthmatics rely on drugs like Ventolin to keep their asthma under control. A year's supply costs about $80. When generic substitutes became available, some doctors prescribed them to save their patients money. That caused some of them worse problems.
I just wonder, in fact, is it because we've changed you from the Ventolin onto the generic inhaler, the Saluvent?
Many doctors have now gone back to Ventolin.
In the survey, the commonest drug which seemed to have caused problems was the generic brand of Ventolin.
Has the health department done anything about this?
Not that I'm aware of.
They're worried cost-cutting without controls by allowing pharmacists to substitute generics could put their patients' health at risk. Developing drugs like Ventolin costs drug companies millions. Companies which simply copy the compounds can produce the same drugs more cheaply. Faced with an annual drug bill of $550 million, the government's sorely tempted to follow overseas trends and allow pharmacists to substitute the copycat generics. It estimates that could save the country $100 million a year. But doctors and pharmacists say cost should not be the only consideration.
General practitioners are concerned that there is no real quality control, that the the health department really don't check that what the manufacturers of the generics state is actually true.
The bioequivalence test is run on a plus or minus 20% basis, so that you may get some products that are in fact 50% out with their generic equivalent.
To protect the patient, both pharmacists and doctors say the health department must set up standards and a system to monitor the generics.
The Gardine family of Matilda has been inundated with calls from well-wishers today. They've had the good news that they're allowed to go ahead with the adoption of a 6-year-old Romanian orphan. Kim Haring reports on one of the happiest households in our region.
The Gardine children never could understand why Dana couldn't join them straight away. Dana herself has never been told of the difficulties in her obtaining a visa, but for Helen and Andrew, having seen the political situation in Bucharest, the waiting has been a nightmare.
And it's wonderful news for those Romanian kids. You know, their future is hopeless, and now they have hope. There is a chance for them to belong to a family, a new start in life, and to be out of a very oppressive, hellish situation in that country.
The Gardines did it all the right way. They bought the information needed from Romania and started the adoption procedure. But they say it was the recent report of a New Zealand official in Vienna that swayed the government and gives hope to the 9 couples still over there.
I think since the time that we signed that statement in Romania before the notary saying that we were planning to adopt Dana, that I've considered her as part of our family. And the first time we took her out for a picnic, it was just as if we were taking out any of our children.
This news from Margaret Austin has, I think, really reassured me, and I feel like an expectant dad who's just been told that he's going to become a father.
Dana's 7th birthday is on December the 7th. The Gardines hope she'll be out here by then. Their present to her, a one-way ticket to New Zealand.
And that'll be a great birthday present for the whole family. It's been a good day too for the Otago rugby team, which has completed its build-up to the big match of the season against Australia with a convincing win against the Hannan Shield districts in Oamaru. After leading by 16-4 at half-time, Otago ran out the winners by 26 points to 4. Heavy rain during the second half had a big impact on the play of both sides. Otago's match against Australia is on Saturday week. And before we go tonight, there's time for another small treat from Invercargill's Verdon College Choir. This time it's a 15th century Italian madrigal called The Cricket.
Hark how he sings, the cricket's a fine singer, his song goes on forever. Little lively cricket, singing, little lively cricket, singing. Hark how he sings, the cricket's a fine singer. He's not like all the other songsters. When they're finished, just one short solo, then they're off for a fresh engagement. No, he stays and just goes on singing while the summer's growing warmer. You still can hear him, though now he only sings for love, for love.
Marvellous voices. We'll be back tomorrow night. Good night.